No, we're not.
I don't know what to do with drink break. Because I actually am kind of empty here. Can we just real quick?
Are you for real?
I am empty.
Oh my gosh. What? Oh my gosh.
We've been talking for so long.
But we
It's
would always
30
have been,
minutes.
go get your flipping
Drink break.
Wake up, everybody! Today is Thursday, Karch 18th, and we are Never Free to Play, a podcast where we talk about all the video games we wish we were playing. I'm one of your hosts, Karch Palashti, joined by my co-hosts, Jason Wright and Sean Mybers. If you decide you like us and want to put the peat in our hinds, you can find us at neverfreetoplay.com, patreon.com/neverfreetoplay, or on all the other social media where we are Never Free to Play. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, feedback, please send it to us at neverfreetoplay@gmail.com. I've had a week. I've had 2 weeks. We haven't met in a while, and it's good to be back. I really like you guys, and I missed talking video games with you, which is what we're going to get to here in a sec. But before that, let's shake off the cobwebs, talk about what's been going on. I'll get through this real quick. I had today off. I got tomorrow off. It's spring break. It's been a pretty good week. These last 2 weeks have felt like an eternity when I looked back on them. My water heater broke. The hose connecting the hot water just decided to spring like a little pinhole leak. I attempted to fix it myself to disastrous results. And I had to get my brother-in-law, who then effortlessly did something that I didn't even know I could do. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. I wouldn't have even thought to even like...
Did he get the hose clamp off?
No, he gave one pull. So I ruined my arms, chest, and shoulders for 3 days trying to get this stupid hose off, when in reality, I don't think it was actually possible. I think it was fused.
Oh.
It looked like it was a threaded situation where you could twist it off.
So he pulled the hose off the connector.
He cut the pipe. He just cut the pipe. And then he got another little hose, which apparently had, there's this brand or technology called Shark Bite, and you just stick it on the pipe. And it just works.
Wow.
Yeah, they're great. I love them.
There's no soldering. I didn't know that was a thing. I could buy a Shark Bite. I have $35 in my bank account. I can go find a pipe
quite
cutter.
a few problems with Shark Bites. They're great.
So now I know.
Karch, this has to be what our wives feel like when we open the jars for them.
Maybe. It probably is. In a far more, I like to think that's still kind of a pathetic situation. Mine's more understandable.
Is it, though?
No.
Okay, but anyway.
It's not. It was a mess. It was just a whole stupid mess, and I want to put it behind me. So, Sean, how have these last 2 weeks been for you?
I got my first COVID shot last week.
Ah, that's right.
That was nice. The drive, I had to drive the Mobile, so I had to drive 3 hours, get a shot, and then drive 3 hours back in a day.
That's a long trip.
It was. But hey, I've got it. I'll be scheduled to get my next one. My wife has been out of town for the last week. Sadly, I didn't get a lot. I thought I was like, oh, the wife's out of town. I'm gonna do all this stuff and these videos and stuff around the house, and then the vaccine kind of floored me for the next 3 days.
Yeah.
So I've not been as productive as I'd like to be, and a lot of that stuff now is going to be done with her here this weekend. So, but
that's fine, because what did you do instead?
I played a lot of video games.
There you go. All right, silver lining
later.
Yes.
So, Jason, how you doing, man?
I just want to say that I'm not a fan of daylight savings time, and I don't get why we should have it. And also,
because we need to win World War II.
I guess so. Good point. But no, the other thing is, why does every device have a different methodology for how to change the time on it? I swear there are a couple things that still are an hour behind because I literally don't know how to change the time on them.
That's like
Keurig.
That's the old joke about the VCR, right? Nobody could figure out how to set the time on VCRs, so they just blinked their entire life.
That's what my Keurig's doing right now, the VCR blink, because I just don't know how to set the time on it. It's not intuitive. So yeah, that's basically it. I've just been spending the last 2 weeks trying to figure out how to change the time on my clock.
I would like to point out how severely I just dated us by talking about VCRs.
Yeah, I mean that's
always weird. I've never thought that of dating us, but we are getting old.
We are getting old.
It's starting to happen. So. But that's our niche, right?
Yeah,
if we ever get one, it'll be us at this age.
Middle-aged gamers. That's what we are.
Yeah.
Middle-aged gamers. I guess we're if you want to look at the distribution curve of people who game, we might be over middle-aged.
That's true.
We got passed by females over 18 are now a larger demographic of gaming than males over 18.
Supposedly.
Blows my mind.
Mostly because of mobile, and only by a percentage, but still.
I welcome our female lovely NFers.
Yes,
Apparently, we need to play more mobile games.
we
yeah,
do.
maybe.
Maybe
Okay.
I'll talk about one later.
Oh boy.
Got to record that Candy Crush.
Housekeeping. Candy Crush. Like, sub, follow, especially on YouTube, especially on Twitter. If you follow us on any other social media platform, you might be disappointed.
Actually,
But not on those ones.
gonna try and start doing some Instagram stuff in the next week or so.
Really?
Yeah.
I keep debating
Good.
trying to do like a Twitch like every, I don't know, Tuesday night or something.
Okay, well, prove me wrong, you two. That's not the only changes that we're making, because from here on out, we're changing up the format of the podcast. You know, you guys don't come here for the news. You come here for the never free to play. So we're not going to do the news anymore. You probably get your news other places. Anyway, we're just going to talk about video games. So for now on, we're going to try to probably just stick to gaming impressions and then our topic of the week, which could kind of bleed into the news, but we'll see. Also, as everybody knows who watches the show, week 2 of the month is solo video week, and I'm surprisingly, we did not disappoint. I really thought we were going to drop the ball, but we didn't. Sean has a new Messenger video up. It's part 2 of his series where he beats the Messenger.
It's funny.
Karch. Yes, exactly. Go check it out. Karch has a very, very insightful and well-written Kingdom Hearts video up, or that will be up by the time you're listening to this. So go check that out. And I also did a little recap video. I accidentally erased my save file for Final Fantasy VII, but we did have one diehard fan, shout out Crimson Karma, who wanted me to play Final Fantasy VII, so I'm getting back to it. And I started on the Xbox Game Pass version, which has 3x speed. I shot a little recap video. It's only 16 minutes. Go check it out right now. Pause the podcast, go watch it, and then come back.
I wish
No
I had a
shout-outs,
fan
no
as dedicated
corrections.
to my Messenger series as Crimson Karma is to your Final Fantasy VII series.
You'll get one.
Well, you're gonna that fan's out there, Sean. You're just gonna have to find him. No shout-outs, no corrections. No news.
No news. It's on.
Does that
Trash
mean we
can.
skip right to drink break?
All right, now that everybody's topped off after only 20 minutes of recording, let's go ahead and talk about what we've been playing, some gaming impressions. It's been a wild 2 weeks. I knew we'd have a stockpile of stuff to talk about. I thought that'd be pretty cool. It's a reason why we cut out the news. I didn't realize we'd have as much to talk about because both Sean and I got some early surprise. At least I got an early surprise. I don't know if Sean's was, but last time we recorded episode 50, you'll probably remember that I got a PS5. Sean got an Xbox Series S. My PS5 was slated to be delivered on April 13th. It was over a month away. And then not 4 days later, Sunday afternoon, my daughter, or the dogs barked. No, my daughter didn't bark, but she brought my attention to the door outside or something. I opened the door, and there's a giant Walmart box just sitting there on the patio. I turned behind me because I can see my wife from the room. I'm like, did you order anything from Walmart? She was like, no. I'm like, there's a giant box. She's like, it's probably your PS5. I'm like, how is that possible? And I rush in and I open it up. There it is in all its gigantic glory. And so I got a nice early birthday present because this was my birthday present to myself. And I was expecting it a month before my birthday. And it actually came 2 months before my birthday. And so that was a fun little but unexpected afternoon of getting it set up and putting it in the living room next to the big TV and booting up Astro's Playroom and just taking a look around the UI and transferring my PS4 data, and it was overwhelming. I will say I really just was not expecting it. And so by the end of the day I was like, I don't know what to do with myself. I had all these plans of what I was going to play until it got here, with only 2 weeks until Returnal was going to come out. Like I had a plan, and then Walmart just kind of said, screw your plan. You're going to play some PS5. And so that's what I did. And let me tell you, this is a next-gen console, boys. This is a next-gen controller. This is a next-gen pack-in with Astro Playroom taking advantage of that controller with all of its delicious haptics.
Tell me about it, because when I was playing a game with that I'll talk about later, I was thinking to myself, oh man, I wonder what the PS5 would feel like, the DualSense would feel like right now if I was playing this game. So tell me a little bit about that and Astro's playroom.
So yeah, I'll talk about the controller first. We'll start because it's probably my favorite, most like glowing thing about the whole experience so far. It's all white and I don't love the, visually whatever. It's got some texture on the handles, which I thought I was going to hate, but I actually love. It's the opposite. I love that texture on the back. It's got a little heft to it. Well, so it's maybe, just spitballing, like maybe 30% heavier than the PS4, the DualShock 4. So I like that a lot. There's texture on the thumbsticks, which again, I like very much. It's just slightly bigger, fits in my hands a little bit nicer. It's just a very well-designed controller, without straying too far from what has made the DualShock so, beloved all these years by most people. I know people love the Xbox controller, and Sean certainly loves the Elite, and he should. It's an excellently built piece of hardware. But yeah, I like it as far as form factor is concerned, and that's really cool. But the haptics are crazy. The rumble, Switch came out and it was like, yeah, HD rumble, blah, 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 ice cubes and other weird things. I don't even remember what they did anymore. No, not even a little bit. This is HD rumble. The minute little bumps and little vibrations and jiggles in every little bit of the controller, depending on what you're doing. It's crazy. I just never would have expected them to care enough to like create something that would be so detailed, and it immediately becomes second nature. Like you just expect it, and it all makes sense no matter what your little character's doing. And like I said earlier, Astro was such a fun little platformer. People loved the VR game. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play it because I don't have PSVR, and I'll never probably ever get to play it. But it was, very well received critically. And it shows that that this team knows how to make a good platformer. But this team knew exactly what their goal was, and that was to ease people into the controller, and then through the controller, ease them into how your PS5 kind of works. Maybe not necessarily every aspect of it, but a lot of them, even like recording and screenshots and stuff. But those triggers, man, the L2 and the R2, there's rumble in those. And, at one point they give you a little bow and you pull back on that sucker and it resists you. And it's like, that. We already knew that. It's not a secret, but like, it's a totally different thing to actually experience it. And I feel like I'm going to break it. Like, how is this possible? How does this thing exist that like just pushes back on me? Because when you're playing any other game so far, or the controllers even off or whatever, they're just those marshmallow buttons that we're used to. They're analog, and you can kind of feel a bit of a spring in there, but for the most part it's just like press, whatever. But then like depending on what you're doing, for instance, at one point like you jump into this suit as Astro and you become a monkey, and you have to like jump up and grab these bars. And so you're holding onto the bars, and then if you let go with one of the triggers, he lets go with his hand, and then you tilt the controller. There's a lot of motion in this game too, showing you just like, because you have two hands on it, it'll never be quite like a Joy-Con or a Wii situation, but the motion is still very, very good. The gyroscopic aiming is there when you're aiming something like you get like a little like pellet gun at one point as well. But yeah, you're climbing as this monkey, and you're basically making climbing motions with your hand without ever removing them from the controller. And he grabs this thing, and it like ticks over like that little disc that you have in Twilight Princess. Sean, you'll remember that. Like Link hops on it and he goes on the little rail. Well, it's kind of like that, except you can feel the vibrations ticking, and it's crazy. It's so hard to describe, other than that it delivers on everything that they promised that it would. And I love it. It's great.
Like, so, it's been the one feature probably of the PS5 that has really intrigued me. I remain concerned that it's because it's, you're gonna have people who aren't gonna want to deal with it because this is gonna slow my trigger pull time or whatnot because of the resistances. But that extra step of immersion, I mean, it's really one of the next steps we could take in the immersion. It's so intriguing to me. Without being like this, the Wii big wide motions. This is still very much playing a video game holding a controller, but just that extra little bit. And I'm gonna have to get my hands on it at some point because it really does just kind of intrigue me. And that's, I mean, you're right up there with everything I've heard from everyone. Of like they'll describe it and it's like, man, that sounds awesome, but it is one of those things that's just everyone that tells me about. It's like you have to experience it.
Yeah, there's no other way.
This really also, the other thing kind of add on to that is this really excites me in general, but when you talked about how immersive this was, it made me really excited that Sony's already said they're developing a new controller for PSVR 2.
Yes.
Because I'm really hoping some of the haptics, they can integrate those features into it to enhance the immersion. And man, if they do that, they're so going to get me. I own an Oculus Quest 2. I don't want to buy a PSVR 2, but if they do that, it's like you both just said, you can't just describe it. You have to experience it.
Yeah.
VR is the same way.
Very
So
much
combine those two things. And oh man, I'm excited.
Well, that's that's the next thing for VR, right? It's the next step to feel like you're in the world is to beyond now you're not just seeing the world, you're going to feel the world. That's yeah,
it's great.
But-
And there's the controller has a not a microphone, a speaker. Sound comes out of it. And I haven't turned it off yet, and it really added to the coin collecting noise because there's coins in the game, and just lots of little like teeny tiny like kind of ambient noises would come out of the controller, along with like light background music that just added to the experience. I'll probably still turn it off because it is noisy at that point, but I enjoyed it.
Have you gotten a sense of like battery life yet with those additional features?
No, because I've been pretty good about plugging it in whenever it's like 1 bar down out of the 3 that it shows me.
Do you think that this is something that developers will actually utilize, like third-party developers? Because, I mean, everybody's going to draw the comparison to the little touchpad on the DualShock 4.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this is kind of going to be one of those gimmicky things that no one takes advantage of? Or if I'm developing a game for Xbox and PlayStation, am I going to put in the extra effort to utilize those features?
I think there's going to be degrees of which you can utilize it. So as a good example, again, it's a really good question, and one that I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if they do or don't. Unfortunately, I hope they do, and I think they will to a degree. I think they'll definitely take advantage of the rumble. I don't see why they wouldn't. It's really cool. I think they'll take advantage of the haptic feedback. I don't know if they'll take advantage of. Although I don't know, because they're already analog. Because at one point, like again, as the monkey, you can grab. You're grabbing these rocks, climbing up a wall, but some of them are fragile, and if you pull all the way back on the trigger, it breaks it. And he takes a little slip, and it gives you a little tooltip, and it's like, hey, do it gently, and you're like, oh, okay. And again, you can technically already do that. You can do a gentle pull on an analog trigger. So I mean, I guess so. Yes, I think they will. I don't see why they wouldn't. I think it's interesting technology. They'll want to be able to say, "Hey, look how cool this is over here." If your game has a bow and arrow in it, you're gonna be a complete and utter idiot not to utilize it because it's one of the first things that they show you. It's like, here's a bow. I got my gyroscopic, which is it? Gyroscopic aiming on top of the little trigger pull and the haptic resistance and all that stuff. It's like it's going to be amazing playing Horizon with this.
Oh yeah,
and feeling like heavy footsteps of like the robots and the monsters and stuff and the bow and it's going to be so good.
That's what I was really thinking too. Is if no one else makes use of this, you can bet that the Sony exclusives, it might be they will I think certainly make use of it, and they'll probably make best use of it, and that may be just something else that helps once again kind of set their exclusives apart of that high quality that they have.
Yep.
I can't wait to feel like the pull of a trigger. When you have tension to a certain point, but when the bullet leaves, like you get that really quick release. I think that's going to be really cool. Those types of little elements, like you said, Karch.
Yeah. I'm excited to play something where, like, because Astro's a little teeny tiny robot dude, and things happen to his entire person, but like I want to see what happens if they like you're playing a game, you're a normal sized person, and I don't know, let's say you take an axe to the gut in Resident Evil 8, for instance. I want to feel that in the controller somehow. I want to know that they hit my middle area, or I got hit in the head, or something. You know, like that's going to be really cool too.
Especially for first person, that could help you,
right?
You know,
locate, locate where you got hit from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny is we're talking about this and kind of gushing over the possibilities, while if Nintendo did this, you know, everyone would just call it a gimmick, just like they did. And I guess Nintendo's earned that reputation. But it is funny how much I feel like this is as excited as I've ever been for the next thing of technology into gaming, you know, in terms of immersion. I've always perceived the Nintendo side of it, if they were to do something similar. I personally have always kind of interpreted it as a gimmick. But here I feel like, well, I don't see why everyone wouldn't try to implement this or copy this in some way on their platform.
I think this is a fully realized version of what Nintendo was trying to do with the Joy-Cons. For instance, I mean, first of all, they don't have the same kind of, you know, they don't have analog triggers. They're digital now. There's no, you just can't have that kind of sensitivity. But like, this is a $70 controller. This is a controller I don't mind paying $70 for. I understand. I mean, I'm not going to buy a second one, but I understand why it's $70. I don't understand why 2 Joy-Cons is $80. Like, it doesn't make any sense. What?
Like, still they are.
Exactly, right? And then they break. And then who knows? You know, jury's still out on how what the longevity is on the controller. But I'm gonna put the controller down for a second, metaphorically. It's a great piece of hardware. We're gonna move on, talk about the rest of the hardware. This thing is enormous. I sent you guys a picture of how it looks next to my 42-inch TV. It's so big. It's obscene.
It's like 2/3 the way up. It's crazy.
So, you know, find the dimensions of a 42-inch TV. Account for like 2.5 inches of, you know, between the stand and the actual TV bezel itself, and then 2/3 up of that. No joke. It's so big, but it's quiet. You know, so far it hasn't been super noisy. The beep on the startup is super loud. It's the same like noise that the PS4 makes. It's just way louder. And I don't know if that's because my PS4 is like low to the ground in my bedroom with carpet, so maybe somehow it like muzzles it. And right now it's in my living room, the PS5 that is, and maybe it's echoing off of the entertainment center or the wall or something. I don't know, but it's really loud. I go turn it on, I'm like, oh, that's assaulting me. But yeah, I played. I don't have time to talk about Astro. Maybe I'll talk about Astro next time. It's a really good game.
We skipped the news for you
all
to talk
I'll talk
about
Astro.
Astro.
I'll talk about Astro. Astro is amazing. It is a beautiful little platformer. I cannot wait to play more Astrobot full, you know, $60, $70 game. Give me a full platformer that isn't in VR, because these guys know what they're doing. This is a very, very well made platformer. Every tutorial is visual. There is no text whatsoever. Everything is amazingly intuitive. It's so clever. I don't know the last time I played a game that's this clever. So that like the premise is like you're inside the PS5 essentially. Like you're inside a computer console of sorts. And there's 4 main levels, and each of those levels is themed after like a major component of the system. The SSD, the GPU, like the cooling system, and then the CPU as well. And they're all color. They all have one's green, one's like a pinkish purple, one's blue, and one's red, I think. After the colors of of course the controllers, the triangle, circle, cross, and square. And
sacred symbols, if you will.
The sacred symbols, if you exactly. And so you go through those, and they're all quick little jaunts. You know, each one a little sectioned out, and you can, once you've beaten one or gone to it, you can immediately just teleport there. And, you know, it might not be the best example of a game that really needed the SSD, but there are no load times. They just don't exist. Like, you go from one room to another, and he does do this quick little, like, hyperspace jump. You know, instead of hyperspace, it's like cyberspace as he moves from one room to another. But it's entirely, like, aesthetic. It's not because they needed to do that. And so you're romping around, and the GPU's like based after a jungle. That's where you're the monkey. And so it's called GPU Jungle, and it's got lots of things that have to do with graphics, but it's also like very foresty, but nothing's like, there are some plants, but there's a lot of vines that are actually like cables and just all that kind of stuff, and like GPU chips and cards just poking out of everything. There are references on references on references of like classic Sony IP, but also stuff that's just associated with Sony. So you'll see stuff like God of War, of course. You saw, and it's always the scene is like, you'll come across a little Astrobot character with like a camera, like he's filming something, and then like they're basically cosplaying the game, and so you see the cordyceps monster, around a corner, and then there's a Joel and an Ellie, and he's got a brick in his hand, and you're like, I know what that's from. I've played that game before. And you feel so giddy and stupid, but they've got like Crash, they've got Devil May Cry and Resident Evil, and of course Metal Gear Solid, which for the longest time was essentially a PlayStation exclusive, and he's under a little box, and it's just so much fun. It's so much fun to just go through these. And while I have a lot of nostalgia and history with PlayStation, it's certainly not on the level of my Nintendo, but you go through this and like they make you feel like you were a part of it, even if you don't. I won't spoil the last boss because it's really fun and cute and clever. Again, just that's all this game is. But it is just hilarious callback to like the beginning of PlayStation. All the collectibles are in the forms of these little artifacts, and they're basically just different pieces of hardware from the four main generations, so the PS1, 2, 3, and 4. But like the cameras, the multi-tap extensions, so you could plug in more than 2 controllers to have like up to 4, or even like, yeah, exactly. The controllers themselves.
Those days.
Yeah. The end of every major level, like each one encompasses basically like one of those generations. And so like the prize at the very end of every level is the console itself, the PS1, the PS2, the PS3, and so forth. And then all those things, there's like a museum lab of sorts where they will be, so you can jump on them and hit them, and they'll do things like the PSP Go. When you hit it, it slides up, and there's like the PSVR, and people are like, you can walk into the goggles and view the original Astrobot Rescue mission being played like on the It's like all these little details. It's so amazing. It's so amazing.
Wow.
And it just plays so well. Again, it's not especially hard or complicated. Some of the artifacts are hidden behind like a slightly harder course, but that's not the point of this game. This point of the game wasn't trying to be Celeste or the super hard levels of Mario. I hope that one day that we do get those. I want to see where this game can go. I want to see Sony like, here's our platformer, and it's really good, and it's worth standing next to these other ones. They've never really done that, and sort of with Sackboy, but it fell out of favor, and they just kind of abandoned it for during the entire like PS4.
Well, Crash is 3D platformer,
and not theirs though. Like it's kind of de facto was, but it's not theirs.
Yeah,
certainly not now. Now the Activision has gone back into.
Right.
Making newer games for it. But it's fun. And obviously if you get a PS5, you'll be able to play it. So really, I'm just telling you to buy a PS5 so you can experience this game. But I'm pretty close to the platinum. I probably still won't get it, but I'm only a few artifacts away. And then there's lots of little clever things like that. You just kind of have to hit a thing or walk through a thing. And it's like, and then the trophy name is a pun, and you just bing, 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 bing. Speaking of trophies, every trophy you get the snapshot like you used to, but it also records like those like last 15 seconds, which is kind of cool. Like if you're into the sharing thing, all those features are still there like they were before, but it's even smoother and easier to like hit those buttons and start your video or take your screenshot or share your stuff. And I've already used it quite extensively with Kingdom Hearts 2 footage. I've got like, I don't know, 5 or so hours recorded already before I get my micro SD card so I can put it on there with my brand new capture card that Jason bought me for an early birthday, late Christmas present. But yeah, right now it's in my living room, the PS5 that is. And so it's been difficult to play sometimes because I am sharing that TV with the rest of the family. And I don't want to play certain games where little eyes can see them. Specifically, I started playing Resident Evil 7. And I don't want to play that when she can walk around because, it's Resident Evil 7 and she's only 7. And despite the naming of the game, it's not made for 7-year-olds. So we don't want that and scarring for life. But that leads me into my next thing is that I did land, I hardwired this up. I ran an Ethernet cable all around the house into the router, and I was able to do the remote play on my phone. And man, works like butter. I played a little bit of Control, maybe like 20 minutes, and I played maybe like 2 hours of Resident Evil 7, and no skips, no hiccups, no nothing. And, for more than maybe like 2 seconds, if that. So like it was a really good experience. And I don't know if that's because of the hardwire or if it's because it's maybe a slightly better version of something that already existed.
No, it's the hardwire, dude. But
That hardwire makes a huge difference in that type of stuff.
Clearly.
I'm just saying, because I like, as nice as my network is, my PS4 has terrible connection to it, and I cannot remote play in this house. It's crazy.
Yeah. And before, that was the same thing with me. And I did hardwire it for that one stupid Final Fantasy IX trophy, but that also ran while I was sleeping, so I didn't really get to experience it. Dumb thing, though, and way to go, Sony. Like, I don't know how this is, but the DualSense does not work with the Remote Play app on Android. I don't know if it's true for iOS as well. But the DualSense works on Android. I can Bluetooth into it, and I could play like an emulator, or, ironically, I could probably play xCloud with my DualSense controller, but I cannot play remote play with the DualSense. So that's silly.
That's insane.
It is insane. I don't know how you, like, I don't get it. I don't get it. But it works with my PS4 controller, which will work for most games as far as I understand. I know Sony said, like, oh, we won't support it on our games, but so far you don't have any games, Sony. So whatever. And so, yeah, I downloaded the Control Ultimate version, or Ultimate Edition, which is the PS5 version. I honestly, I don't know, it might have been too long. I didn't really notice any enormous enhancements. I wasn't like, oh, I'm feeling the PS5. Like, although I will say,
You were remote playing.
What's that?
Weren't you remote playing?
I did control both remote and.
Oh,
just
okay.
on
Because I was
the
gonna
TV.
say you're not gonna see the HDR and the RTX. And
No,
all
I was
that
talking
stuff.
more for performance, because Control was, especially at launch,
yeah.
was such a horribly performing game, and that did improve. And I don't know how much of that is because of the PS5 Ultimate Edition, or how much of that is because of patches that have come out since. But it's probably a little bit of both. And all the menu hiccups and the weird staggering that happens whenever you try to do anything different from what you were doing before, those are gone. So that was cool. But I'm not playing Control again. I can't. It was fun, but I'm not playing it again. So I'm gonna give up the floor now, because that's about the extent of my PS5 stuff outside of Kingdom Hearts 2, which I'll talk about just a little bit in a little bit. So Sean, you got a new console too. Why don't you tell us about it?
I did, and it was terribly unfair of you to get your console delivered so early. You sent that picture of the console being there, and I spent every day since, because mine was supposed to come like March. It was like 3 weeks from when I ordered it. And it ended up coming last week. So yeah, it ended up being about a week that I had to wait to get it. But the fact that you got yours like 3 days before me meant that every day waiting for mine was like agony. I got mine. It's actually, I got it. It was on my doorstep when I came back from getting my COVID vaccine. I saw this little Walmart box, especially compared to what your box would have been, sitting on my porch. And got the thing hooked up. Actually, I ended up not hooking up over the weekend just because I felt so poorly. That's not true. I didn't hook it up until I think Sunday. Got it hooked up Sunday, and let me tell you, the thing blew my mind. Yeah, I opened up the Walmart box, which was already fairly tiny, and then there's the box for the Xbox Series S. The box for the Xbox Series S is only slightly bigger than my OG Xbox One.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Like that like right there, the size comparison. And then you get into it. I mean, this thing is barely, like, maybe 50% bigger than a Wii. And Microsoft consoles, all the Xboxes have had the ginormous power converter as part of the power cable. No, just a straight run of cable goes in this
Wow.
thing. There is, which I had no idea. I assumed, I was like, one way they got this thing tiny was I'm gonna have another giant power converter box. No, just a cable. It takes up no space. It makes like no noise. But the thing is, you boot it up, and it makes the same little Xbox sound when it boots up. Although I can turn it off. It actually gives me that option, and because it went through
maybe I can too.
whole setup. So yeah, check that out. About the only difference though between this thing booting up and my Xbox One booting up is, Xbox One had the Xbox One image. Every console has their little show off. The biggest thing the S reminds me of is it almost is like the THX, like not quite that level of extreme, but it's definitely this little like building fanfare of Xbox Series.
I like it.
And then, but the cool thing is because I run all my consoles in power saving mode. And so like the Xbox One, takes a good little while to boot up when you launch it. This thing boots up probably as fast as my Xbox One did when it was in instant on mode. And an interesting, I found it because I was concerned that the instant resume wouldn't work if you ran it in power saver mode. No, it still works. Works great.
It's wild.
The 2 games I've had it on, like I've been like, oh, I'm sure it'll go back to the menu on the Messenger. No, it went immediately back to where I'd exited out of the game.
How many games can you do that for?
That's what I was going to ask you.
I've read that like people have gone up to like 6.
Oh, wow.
The hard thing is apparently like it's a little bit like unsure about once you start getting up to that high, how many like what game gets booted off first. There's some unsure on how that's decided, but I've used it for 3, and I've been bouncing between 3 games, and they just drop in. It's awesome.
That's
So
amazing, and that's one thing that consoles do that I will say you just can't do that on a PC.
No,
and it's like good.
I was just gonna say, it's a one upside. I showed necessarily a downside, but an upside for the Xbox stuff is that you can do that. You can have, because it has instant resume too. Like I'll go back and I'll play more Kingdom Hearts 2, and it'll boom kick me right back in with absolutely no wait time whatsoever. But I can only do that with one game at a time, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and with this thing, I hesitate to think how quickly I could just load it, because like right now it's like I hit on. I get my TV turned on, I sit down, Xbox booted up. It's like, wait, if this thing was set to instant on, like, there'd be no. The only delay would be the split second it takes for my controller to connect. Which even then, the controller seems to connect faster to this than it did to my Xbox One. Like everything is just faster.
Yep, everything.
But that's when it comes to the Xbox. That's about where the difference is in. Like I loaded this thing up and it knew I had a profile and it carried over all my so like my dashboard pretty much identical.
Cool.
The controller is identical. That it came with is identical with the exception that it does have that little the share button. Which I was thinking it from. I was like, maybe I should use that one for when I'm recording game. When I want to record things, I was like, oh wait, no, I can take my Elite 2 and set a button combination to auto record footage. I was like, oh nope, never mind. Elite 2's got me covered again.
Nice.
But it's that like obviously I am a big fan of the Xbox One controller. And it's another top-notch Xbox One controller. I am a little upset that it's a white controller, which I knew because the Xbox Series S is white, but the white just shows all that grime on my hands and whatnot, especially if I was out in the yard that day and I haven't washed my hands, all that wipes off on that white controller. But it's that smooth plastic, so it or I guess lightly textured plastic, so it comes off pretty quick. I did find out a really cool feature is I can turn on my Series S, I can turn on my Xbox One, and then I can either hardline them together, or I can actually just do it like overnight over the Wi-Fi. It'll transfer all of my files from my Xbox One onto my Series S.
Yeah, PS4 had that too.
Nice.
Yeah,
and I transferred all the save data, and then I just skipped the games because like I feel like it'll just download faster, and then I can just pick and choose.
It's hardwired.
Well, right, that too. Yeah.
Xbox for a while now, all your save data, unless you choose otherwise, has been up in the cloud. And so I haven't had to worry about that.
Cool.
Besides that, I've only been playing a handful of games on it. None of them are any of the games that are boosted on a Series S, Series X, and none of them are particularly, with the exception of one, are particularly new games. I've been playing a couple indies. So performance-wise, besides all that quick stuff and games, loading up like that, I can't say too much when it comes to next-gen graphics or anything like that. Obviously, Microsoft just doesn't really have much to offer there yet, and probably won't until this fall with Halo. But
cool.
Very happy with it. I am, as opposed to Karch, I'm very happy to have an Xbox down in my living room, which is where this one's living right now until I decide that the better FPS and the better graphics should probably be what I'm recording on, which won't be until I decide to record something that isn't like an indie. but it's nice to have like with my wife out of town. I was using it to watch Rooster Teeth stuff. We did last night have a brief beer before she passed out because she flew overnight back from Hawaii because she had a fun spring break.
Dope.
Yeah. But just going back to sitting on the couch and her playing a little bit of the Switch, me playing the Xbox, and having that gaming in the same room but gaming separately was quite nice.
Nice.
So
All right, Jason, now that you're seething with jealousy from all of our new hardware, tell us about what you've been playing a little bit.
Well, the main thing that I've been playing is Final Fantasy VII. Yeah! And as I alluded to, I lost my save file from my original Final Fantasy VII playthrough on Steam. I don't know why. I guess so you have to log in with a Square Enix login code or whatever, and I think that the default is that the save is supposed to get loaded there or something like that. But anyway, in my case, I guess it negated Steam's cloud save, or you had to opt in for the Steam cloud save. Super annoying because it's I think this is the only game that's ever happened to me on. But at any rate, Steam save gone. And then I was like, well, how can I get back there quickly? Because I know a lot of Final Fantasy games do have a speed up mode on them. And in Final Fantasy VII, it's no exception, except for not the Steam version. So because of that, I went with the Xbox version. And I do truly believe that it is the superior version of the game. I am not a Final Fantasy fanboy, so I can't speak to what the PS2 experience was with it because I never played it back then. But what I will say is I do think there are a lot of quality of life improvements with the Xbox Game Pass version as opposed to the Steam version, which I think the Steam version is very much like the plain Jane.
Yeah, it's old. It's an old PC port that came out maybe like a couple years after the original. So it's very similar to the original in that regard, except it's moddable.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like messing with those mods, so instead I opted for the Game Pass version, which is kind of that newer PC port, and it does have the 3X, and actually there is a video of me playing that on our channel right now that you can go check out, so if you'd like to see me catch up to where I was on my last playthrough video, go ahead and check that out. And then, Luke and I have been playing a lot of car games. We played Forza Motorsport 7. He talked me into buying Burnout Paradise.
Wait. Let's roll back. How did he talk you into it?
Funny thing. I thought that when you subscribed to Xbox Game Pass, you had access to EA Play content. So, Luke and I are on the website of EA Origin, and we're looking at all the EA Play games of what we were going to play because I know I have Xbox Game Pass, so of course I have these games. I get him so stoked for Burnout Paradise, and he is like, can we play it? Can we play it? Can we play it? I'm like, yeah, we can play it. And then I go to looking at how to connect the two, and they're like, oh, yeah, we know we announced this back in October and that we said it would be available in January, but it's not. We can't figure it out. We don't know when it's coming. And I was like, are you kidding me? I got this kid excited for Burnout Paradise, and I love Burnout games because it's like the stunt man of like the purpose of it is to crash and to go fast and to be stupid. So reminds me of a game we had for the N64 called Rush, like Rush 2020, I think it was, or whatever.
I remember that game.
And it reminds me of that. I don't think they're necessarily connected or anything like that, but anyway. So I go on and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy it. I actually found a deal on it on a external site for like $7.50. I'm like, it's worth it.
Hard to beat.
And I bought it. Oh yeah, exactly. And honestly, at this point, I might buy this for him on the Switch because he loves it so much.
Didn't like this week EA came to Game Pass on the computer?
Yes,
did that finally happen like a couple days ago too?
No, today's literally the first day. They announced it a couple days ago. Yeah.
That's
so
funny.
The funny thing is we went last night and watched a bunch of trailers, and he got so stoked for Need for Speed Heat. And then today when I got home, the first thing he said to me is like, "Dad, we gotta go get Need for Speed." And I was like, okay.
Yeah, if that kid loves speed, you know what EA game you should let him play?
What's that?
Titanfall 2.
Oh, I don't care. I'd let him, but I don't know that he could handle the speed. So,
It's too fast.
but yeah, so we did check out EA Play via Game Pass today. It's a little clunky. It's fine. It works fine. So
This is on the PC, right?
On the PC, yeah. So what you have to do to connect these is you go on the Game Pass desktop app. They have a giant row on there that says EA Play Games now available. Click on any of them. Go to install. When you hit install, it will prompt you to install EA Desktop Beta. You do that, you sign in with your EA account, and it automatically links your accounts. And then you can prompt the download for the game inside the Game Pass. It'll launch EA Desktop in the background, but it won't. Then it kind of goes into the background, and then you can basically launch the games from that.
That's so nuts to me because on the Xbox, I'm in Game Pass. I bring up the game, I click install it. It just installs it. There's none of this.
They
getting
never
moved
gave
over
a
to another
technical
app or anything
reason.
like that. It's seamless on the Xbox.
That doesn't mean that's weird. I don't know what delayed them with the rollout. They never really stated a reason. I have no idea. But yeah, anyway, like I said, it's still a little clunky on the desktop. We did download Need for Speed Heat, and that was fun. And then he decided he liked Burnout more. I'm like, okay, whatever. So then I was like, he told me to undownload it. He's like, Dad, undownload that game.
Get rid of this.
Your kid is
I'm
so
like,
bossy.
Okay. And so I go into the Xbox Game Pass app. There's not a way to do it. If you right click on the left hand side where it shows all your games, you right click on that. There's not an uninstall option. So I'm like, okay, fine. I do it through EA Desktop. Went in there, could not find the option. So you have to use the add and remove programs. And as soon as you remove it, it goes away from those two applications. But it's like,
That's so
why
weird.
there's not a button, I have no idea. Then so he was really into, they've renamed this game Star Wars Episode 1 Racing. That's the name of the game. But it's a pod racing game from 1999.
Right.
And Luke really wanted to check it out. Like, he was so stoked for this. So I went to go download it, and it's 34 gigabytes.
That's insane.
The game is from 99.
Yeah.
Did they upload, is it remastered or the graphics?
So that's the thing. We were looking at trailers yesterday, and it literally looks like an N64 port that they've righted the aspect ratio for a modern monitor, but it does not. It looks like the N64. The textures look like.
I wonder if they just didn't compress anything. They're just like, screw it.
I don't
so
know.
Small, even by comparison, maybe. Yeah.
The weird thing was I hit download, and instead of doing what it did for Need for Speed Heat, it just said calculating disk space. And I know I have enough. I know I do. So, I have hundreds of gigabytes free. It's a 34 gigabyte game. And it just said calculating. And I was like, oh, well, that's weird. So I hit the pause button to pause the download, restart it, maybe start something. Nope, didn't work. So then I closed down everything and I brought it back up. And it was not in my my currently downloading. It was not in my downloads. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll just go start the download. So I search for the game and I go to the page, and instead of the install button, it has a button that just says downloading that I cannot press. So it's not in my downloads, but I can't prompt the download. And as of right this very second, I cannot play that game. Anyway, very strange. Very strange. Anyway, that's pretty much all I played this week. Karch, did you play anything else?
Yeah, I had some plans, or at least I didn't have plans for a PS5, so I was just going to play whatever else I wanted. I started playing Diablo 2 because we got some news that we talked about last week or last time. It's going to get hard. It's going to be hard getting used to that. That you can transfer saves from, good old classic Diablo 2 and its expansion to the eventual remaster that's coming out later this year. So I was like, all right, I'll start a new barbarian and just have a little D2 fun until I get bored, and then I'll know that the save is here when I come back. I don't know how the transfer is going to work yet. Hopefully there's a way to get it onto the account, period, and then from there I can access it on my Switch or my PC or whatever other platform I choose to play on. But we'll see. Again, it's not a huge deal. This game is meant to be like kind of replayed and start over and try a new character, blah 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 blah. But it's just such a good game. Diablo 2 is so much fun. I'm playing on single player offline in case there's any weird stipulations about, like, as far as the character transfer is concerned. But like I said, I played a barbarian. I'm not even level 30 yet, so I don't even have the premier ability, which is Whirlwind, which which pretty much every barbarian build is based a little bit around. But so far, I've been going through nice and easy. I did accidentally try to connect online, and it did an update, and it reset all my maps, which was annoying because I had certain bosses on farm, and I really liked the layout of those maps, which don't change in single player. They are procedurally generated in multiplayer. So every time you start, certain locations won't be identical to the last time. That's not true.
I do have to caveat that
Yeah.
it's not procedurally generated like today's games are. There's like
No,
a
certainly not.
combination.
Yeah.
Like say a map is like 3 levels deep. There might be a combination of like 8 combinations of each of those 3 levels.
Right. Which I never memorized. So for all intents and purposes, to me, it was procedurally generated.
The reason I bring that up is because Greg literally did memorize them.
Sure.
And he had a teleporting source for speedruns. And then as soon as he got into a room, he would know where the next level was or the boss was. It was insane to watch.
Yeah.
Did that
playing
for
though.
one game that was like that. Fantasy Star Online episode 1 and 2. I could identify. Oh, this is this version of the map, and then
Right.
most quickly get to the best spots.
That's
very,
crazy.
Very Diablo-like, in a different way, but very Diablo-like. But yeah, playing this game, it makes me excited for the remaster, especially again on maybe the console versions or the PC. It's hard to say because the console's going to have to account for the fact that you don't have a mouse and keyboard, you can't scroll, you can't assign hotkeys, so there's going to be some kind of like ability bar, almost guaranteed. And on some classes, that's just going to make the quality of life of playing them so much better. And I'm really excited to see how that plays out. But not too much else to say about that. I was finally able to get Juliet to play a little bit of Stardew Valley split screen co-op with me. And I was like, yes. And after about 2 hours, she was done for the day. That's fine, whatever. Got a few days through, and then she doesn't want to play anymore. So she got my hopes up, and then she just smushed my face into
Did
the
she
dirt.
cite a reason? Because she really was into Animal Crossing.
No reason whatsoever. In fact, she made me download the Story of Seasons Friends of Mineral-Town like remake that we got like last summer, and she made me download that so she could play that instead. I don't think.
Wow, that's a slap.
I
in
think
the
she
face.
doesn't
It's
like the
twisting the
graphics.
knife.
Yeah, I mean that's a good game too, but it's not as good as Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
And there's no multiplayer. But I think she doesn't like the graphics. I think she's like, why does this game look so bad or ugly? I don't remember the word she used. And I was like, well, it's a stylistic choice. Blah blah blah. She doesn't. I can't explain to a 7-year-old.
One human being.
What'd you say?
And one human being making the game.
Exactly. And I might even try to like make that point, like she would have cared at all.
Yeah.
But she doesn't like not being able to really see her character. She's very much, like Jason said, Animal Crossing is such a big deal because it's dress up the game. It's Dollhouse the game, but on an island instead of an actual dollhouse. Except there is a house that you can make look like a dollhouse if you want. And so I think she didn't like that part of it, but she did like it, and I might be able to convince her to play it some more. But I can't wait to play with you guys next week.
If nothing else, buddy, we'll play together.
Exactly, it's gonna be so much fun because it works so well. I'm amazed at how well this works. It's revolutionary to me that there is such a thing as like a co-op multiplayer farming sim game in the vein of Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon, and I have to wonder what the heck was Natsume and Marvelous Entertainment, all like the producers and publishers, etc., developers of these other games. Why have they never made something like this? And they're just bad at their jobs. They don't know what they're doing, because their games look ugly. Yeah, they don't look like pixelated, but Stardew Valley looks good because it's pixelated. That was an intentional decision, and it looks good. I was looking at the 2 latest Harvest Moon and Story of Season games that came out respectively. They're launching within 2 weeks of each other. One World and Pioneer of Olive Town or something like that, and they look like basic mobile games, and they're not exactly. They look better. I mean, they play better than mobile games, but they don't look better than mobile games. And it's just I'm just so turned off from their utter lack of creativity when it comes to like when I remember Harvest Moon as a kid playing on the 64, the PS1, or even like the GameCube, like there's a lot of heart and character to these designs and the art style, and then the way that that fed into the gameplay in the world. Whereas this is just, at best, it's anime, trash, and at worst, it's just mobile garbage.
It's kind of funny that you mentioned that, and I don't want to get us too off topic, but the way that millennials pine for the SNES aesthetic, 8-bit, 16-bit, do you think that will ever be the case for like those N64 polygonal first gen art style? Because I could see if it was super stylized, it might be a little bit cool.
Because we've already hit that age group. If it was going to happen, it would have happened by now.
Those Super Nintendo 16-bit sprites were like a peak of their art form. Like there's something timeless about that sprite style that like it's this is as good as this was going to look, essentially, as opposed to like the N64 PlayStation 1 first 3D games is like, we've stepped into 3D, and everyone looks at it and goes, yeah, but we didn't step very far. This looks like those games look terrible.
Yeah.
As opposed to like like you can load up a Super Nintendo game and go, that looks good. Like it objectively looks good. Like sprites are just a cool art form.
I totally get that. I just think that if somebody did a super, super polished, what looked to be campy and intentional polygonal art style, and maybe it probably wouldn't work for more than one game, but I could see that.
Right. I'd have to see it to believe it. It's not impossible, and you'd have to make just the right kind of game to fit that art style, but like for the most part, any game that looks like that is unintentional. I can tell you that.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
That was pretty much how the extent of what I had to say about Stardew. I was really excited for that, and I don't know, maybe when summer rolls around, she has more time on her hands, we can sneak off and play a couple days at a time. It's cool because we started off making me the host, and I was like, oh, that was a mistake, because if she wants to play without me, she couldn't, or something weird like that, I think. And so we started over real quick. It'd only been a couple days, but she did play a little bit on her own without me. And she came back excited. She was like, I did this. I'm like, great, blah, blah, blah. And then when I try to get her to play every other time, she's been watching TV though, and she's really into the shows, and it's hard to get her away from that in general, as we all remember when we were children and all we wanted to do was watch cartoons. I'll tell you about something I stopped playing. Cold turkey, I dropped Magic the Gathering. Not playing it anymore.
Oh,
wow.
You feeling all right?
Because yeah, I'm feeling fine. I just it's a time sink, which isn't necessarily a problem. I have time in my life for one mobile game, which is essentially what it was even before it was actually on my phone. Now that it's on my phone, it is a mobile game. And I know we made the jokes about like, oh, they're paying you to play. That's not actually true. I still have to pay like $50 like 4 times a year. I'm like $200. Isn't a huge amount, but like gaming is what I do.
You could get an Xbox Game Pass for the year for that.
Exactly. And then have something left over. And then that's, it was these kinds of things. It was like, if I want to do Game Pass again, or $70 games is, nothing to sneeze at, especially now that I finally have a PS5 and Returnal and Deathloop and all this stuff's going to start coming out real soon. Right after Deathloop is Ratchet. And then who knows what the fall is going to look like. And so I thought, okay, I don't want this time sink anymore, especially if I'm having to pay for it. As fun as it is, it's time to say goodbye. So goodbye, Magic the Gathering. Goodbye, Magic Arena. It was fun. Part of this was spurred on by the fact that I used to play a game called Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia.
You were playing that the last time you came here.
I was, yes. I was playing it quite extensively. And I stopped
2 words that make sense and 3 nonsense words.
Dissidia is the series. I don't know what Dissidia means, but that's their little PSP fighting game series where they put all the characters, like the main characters from the Final Fantasy games, and the main villains. And basically, it was Square Enix's take on it. It didn't play at all like a fighting game. It was very unique, but essentially, it was a fighting game.
Huh.
And so Final Fantasy, obviously, and then Opera Omnia is like Latin for like a collection of works, or all the works collected together, because that's what's happening. It's bringing in all the characters from Final Fantasy into this mobile game. And it is a mobile game. And it has a gacha system where you have to, you do pulls is what they're usually called, but they're basically loot boxes, and you open them up, and you get all the characters for free in this. It's the weapons that make them better and worth using that are the loot boxes. And I've talked about this game, I believe, on the podcast in the past. It's actually quite generous. I've never once spent a dime on it. Another reason I'm going back to it. And it's just a better thing to play in your downtime. Magic takes a long time. You got to build decks. You got to play through a match. There's, it is all it is PvP. It's constant PvP, and that eventually kind of does stress me out. No PvP in this. It's all me. It's all just chasing that next character, who they launch, like which one is coming this week, whose weapons dropping this week, and so that's what I'm back to on my phone. And I'm having a good time with it. So, I lost my account though. Like I backed it up at some point, but I don't know to what account or what system. So I'm starting over, which stings. I almost didn't do it, but I know how the system works, and I know like I'll have a lot of the currency up front because they're really, they want those new players to kind of get caught up, so to speak. So I know what quote unquote decisions to make so that I can get the most out of that currency. And so, it's going to take a bit to get back to where I was and get all my favorite characters up to snuff again, but whatever. I don't know. I never spent any money on it before. I'm not going to spend any money on it now. So it's, it's really neither here nor there. Sean, what else you been playing?
So I got 3 things. So obviously I've been playing the Messenger, got my second video up after some technical difficulties, which involved me accidentally deleting audio files. I got part 3 recorded, part 4 is recorded, and then post part I thought I had recorded part 5, and I don't know if it was the side effects of my COVID vaccine put me slightly out of sorts, but I totally screwed up the recording of that. So as opposed to not having my commentary audio but having gameplay, I had now had commentary audio but had screwed up the recording of the gameplay. So I've had some difficulties with the Messenger, but I got all those back on track now, and I'll keep churning away on those this weekend. I wanted a game to start on my Xbox Series S, and so actually the first game I downloaded on my Series S was Ori and the Blind Forest, which is on my list of games to play this year. Although I think I'm a few months early. But I only got about an hour into that. But oh my god, the first 5 minutes of that game, talk about just breaking your heart.
Hits you in the gut.
It hits you in the gut. I was not aware that's where that was gonna go, and I was not ready for it. But I think I'm enjoying it. I'm very early in, so I don't have like a good feel for the game and how much I'm going to enjoy the game. I'm sure I'm going to like it. I mean, it is an absolutely gorgeous, especially almost like painted background game. The backgrounds on that are just amazing.
I will say, if you like it, keep going, obviously. But if you're finding like after 2-3 hours, you're like, this isn't quite my cup of tea, drop it. Pick up the next one. Because it does improve mechanically, assuming that that's what you're missing. If you might just not be feeling the whole thing altogether. But if it is just a little, like, I don't like that it's too much platforming, or that it does kind of make me do some combat, because the combat gets so much better in the second one. And for the most part, you do not have to have experienced the first one at all to understand what's going on. It's kind of the same thing almost. It's like, here's another really sad thing. We're just gonna make things sad again, but in a different way. So, just a kind of heads up.
Okay, I think it's like I'm realizing very quick that I think I'm running into a game that's going to be a Metroidvania style. And I think
sure.
It was more. I just wasn't quite expecting that. I was expecting more kind of linear levels.
No, not at all. Yeah,
and I have I played the Metroid Prime, but I really haven't played a lot of Metroidvanias, and I'm curious if that maybe is boiling into I'm not a huge fan of them, or I just haven't experienced them and I'll really enjoy it. We'll find out.
Welcome to the team.
No, shut up.
I mean, I have played somewhat of a Metroidvania because I have gotten further into the Messenger than I'll owe up here. But so I do know that one gets some backtracking involved, but it's not quite the same.
No.
I did play. I downloaded after Jason talked about some Deep Rock Galactic. Could not get. We didn't have any time for us to get together and play, but I did play with my younger brother, and I played solo. And just a fun way to kill 20-30 minutes at a time going on a mining expedition. I will say the little robot that assists you when you're solo kind of makes that game easy mode, because like you're like, oh, look at that, like, or that gold I want to mine way up on that wall. And whereas if you were playing it with a team, you'd have to like coordinate to like get a platform underneath it, so then the gunner could like put like a his little trolley line to get up there. This one, you're just like, robot, go mine that for me, and then I'll just stand down here on the floor, and as it falls, I'll gather it. I think the biggest thing that has blown me away in that game, though, is and clearly this is maybe one reason they took the hit on their. It's not like it's a high fidelity graphics game. The dynamic lighting in the game, like part of the joy to me is like when you like go dig through the loose dirt, and now you're in a new area and it's completely dark, and you throw your flare, and like watching that light like traverse down and bounce down, into these big caverns and out of sight, and illuminate things before they fall back in the darkness. It's like a really kind of cool awe moment before you then like, oh wait, did I see a monster there? Oh crap! Or a horde is coming at me, and you like you throw the torch and you see like the dimly outlined silhouettes of a dozen of these arachnid monsters coming at you. And you're like, oh, this is gonna be bad.
You just kind of answered a question I had, because I don't remember if Jason ever really said it or I wasn't paying attention. What do you fight in this game? What are the monsters? Are they just spiders? Or?
Yeah, they're not quite spiders because they're like 4-legged, but they're essentially there's a few different varieties of, but they're
like bugs.
Because there's different biomes. Yeah, they're bugs. Each biome kind of has like a couple, because there's like different areas of the planet you'll go down to and have a couple unique creatures. But then there's always like the generic, like, oh, this creature runs at me and punches me, and here's a smaller version that does less damage but is faster and harder to hit. Oh, and here's the really big one that's got a weak spot, and then a couple ones that like breathe fire or breathe whatever kind of element is related to that. And so you'll run into a few of those, and also like the local biome monsters going around. But every so often, like your little overseer guy will be like, "We got a horde incoming," and so you'll like frantically try to like find a spot to defend. And I play the engineer, so I can put like depending upon my perk tree, like 1 or 2 turrets down. So then like I'll drop my turns and get them loaded up with ammo, and then you basically like just endure and try to survive it and then once you survive it, go back to exploring and trying to find whatever you're on this mission trying to find.
Cool.
The last thing I'll add about that is I leveled up because you have like your individual character level, and then you have your player level, and your player level has to be at least a level 3 to order a round of drinks for your crew at the bar. I hit level 3, so when we play, first round is on me.
Cheers.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I played this week was, and I joked about this, or I guess in the last 2 weeks, and I joked about this during the last podcast, is I downloaded Anthem. And I played Anthem. I played probably like hour and a half, 2 hours of Anthem. And like, I'll tell you what, that game is gorgeous. And flying in that game and your javelin is like, it's a pleasure. You're sitting there and just enjoying this world, and the flying is intuitive and it's responsive, and like going from like the mobile flying to like the hovering, and now you got your gun out and you can engage in combat is a really fun, like really kind of fun way to play. And it really annoys me because there's areas in the game that were like, oh, you've lost flight capability, and I was like, flight is like the biggest joy this game offers you. Otherwise, it's like a third-person shooter without the flight. A couple other things is like you could tell that because we all know of the troubles that game went through. You can tell that like there are parts of this game that were like set pieces, even early on, that were like set pieces that were probably done before whatever happened, and they had to like start over because like the tutorial or like the first level, and then the couple like the first tutorial level, like your interactions with NPCs, it's like dynamic. They're moving around. You're watching them, and it looks great. And then I've gotten like kind of into like the rigmarole game where like the overarching story doesn't quite make sense, and it's just like dialogue boxes kind of going on, and you're in that BioWare Bethesda. I'm having a conversation with this NPC, and they're staring me fixed in the eye with their like 1,000-yard dead stare. And you're like, there was parts of this game that were amazingly done, and then all that stuff that happened at BioWare, whether it was incomplete or because they basically went back and had to redo the game so many times. Some of that really top-notch stuff has survived, and then it's like patched together with kind of meh. And this actually brings my other gripe with this game is my gaming gripe of the week. Which is, there's a couple of cutscenes early on this game where my character is doing awesome things, and it angers me when video games do this. I remember the last time I got really upset about this was playing like Halo 5. Like Halo 5 did this repeatedly, but like the very first level playing as like locking all them is this like battle against this like Covenant army going down down this mountain. In this case, you're fighting like flying pterodactyl like monsters, and it's a cutscene that goes on for like a minute or two, and he's your character's doing awesome stuff and killing things, and you're like, no, it's a video game. I should be controlling my character doing this stuff. Like, I hate a game that sits there and especially for an extended period of time. It's one thing. Yeah, I remember like Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes had like a lot of times when you finish the boss fight, it would play a short little cutscene and Solid Snake would do something super cool that you couldn't do in the game to finish him off. But I had beaten the boss. This is like awesome things happening that I'm utterly not involved with. And I'm sitting here for like a minute or two watching it. It's like
They should at least give you like a little quick time event or something.
Something, yeah. I'm not here to watch the game. I'm here to play the game. And like to take away these moments, because a lot of them are your character doing awesome things, and I get it. Like the way it's implemented isn't maybe quite the same as the same controls. But like God of War had those moments, like when you're on the dragon,
True.
you're getting tossed around, and it adjusted its control scheme, so you could do, you were at least a part of these really cool moments and not just passive. And it annoys me so much. So Anthem has done that to me. But I will say I'll go back and play a little bit. Kyle and I are looking at maybe playing a little bit together. I don't know how much I'm going to play. I probably should look up how long its main storyline is and at least play the end of that. I don't plan on doing any of like the what that game has of an end game, because I know it was poor and obviously any plans have been scratched. But it has kind of reaffirmed my previous take, which is, there's a good game there. The flying is good. The combat's fine. Much more, more dynamic than anything else that you've seen out of BioWare. Except I think the most recent Mass Effect Andromeda had pretty quick combat. But it's it's not just a cover-based shooter. It's quick. I do wish I maybe picked one of the other, like I picked like I think the most generic Javelin. So my combat is a little generic, and Kyle has been telling me to play. He's playing like almost like the spellcaster type class, and he's able to like bring down fireballs and lightning bolts and whatnot. And that sounds way cooler than me shooting rockets and throwing grenades, which is par for the course. But there is a good game in there, and there are good moments in that game, and it just it just reinforces that things did not were at least while this game was being developed, I hope they've been resolved for BioWare's sake, but things were not going well there.
Right. Oh well.
And that's it for me.
All right. Let's see. I had just a couple more things. I did start my Kingdom Hearts 2 playthrough. I started over because whatever. Haven't caught up to where
What did you mess up so bad that you had to start over in Kingdom Hearts 2?
Absolutely nothing. Oh, I wanted. Oh, that's not true. I wanted footage from the beginning. I wanted footage. I wanted to capture as much as stuff.
Gotcha.
So I guess I did
like
have a good reason.
The acceptable answer. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Monster Hunter comes out in 10-2, 8 days.
Ooh,
This is interesting because you didn't think you'd have your PS5 by now.
I didn't think I'd have my PS5 by now. I thought I'd be done with Bravely Default or much closer to that, and so like it's a race against the clock. I thought I was going to be
World and play that on my Xbox Series S.
You should.
And
you should do that.
So I can figure out whether or not I want to play a Monster Hunter game, or if I'm going to ditch it and run right to Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Would you go to? Are you going to play it before the? Oh, wait, you can't play the expansion, can you?
No.
You're just trying to dunk on us, Karch?
No. Yes, exactly.
PS5.
Just trying to. Wait, yes, you can, because it's going to be. Oh wait, is it exclusive?
No, the expansion is only the PS5.
It's so dumb. Come on, Square. What are you doing? All right. Anyway,
I think.
Monster Hunter Woes. It's coming out soon. I might have to just pump the brakes and not play it those first couple of weeks. I might have to resist the FOMO and put it off until like early April or whatever.
No, Returnal's early April, right?
No, Returnal is April 30th. It is the end of April.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right. So it would be pretty good timing, because I don't think that game's going to be long, to at least get my fill out of it. Like I imagine it's going to be like Hades was long even after. Yeah. Anyway, long story short, I thought I was going to write off Bravely Default 2. I was like, I'm not in love with this game. I don't hate it, but maybe I'll just put it away for now and come back to it later or something. But I played a lot of it yesterday and today, and I'm back in. This game is fun. This is a fun game. So I talked about it a little bit last time. The beginning is very basic. It's not bad basic, but it is basic. Chapter 2, though, reminiscent of the same like chapter 2 story when you go to the same kind of sort of desert town, but there's some minor political intrigue and the characters' decisions, especially the villain decisions. Like, okay, these are good villains. These are good reactions from the main characters. And then you get into chapter 3 in the next town and the next crystal, and man, there is a gigantic tonal shift where things just get dark. Like, and I'm not being flippant with that word. Someone's like, oh, it got edgy, and it's like someone said a bad word, or maybe there was some blood. No, no. Like, this game thematically got dark fast, and I just wrapped it up, and I was like, what just happened? And was this a weird anomaly, or is the rest of the game going to be like this? Because that's going to be fun. It was wrapped up a little too quickly and neatly, and the character's response to it was a bit just like, well, I'm just gonna beat you up, and this is payback. Like, one of them literally said it's payback time. I'm like, I think we could have come up with a better line than that for this particularly heinous thing this character just
didn't realize
did. But
that
that's
Teenage
fine.
Mutant Ninja Turtles were in this game.
Right? It was such a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles line, and I felt like that when I was playing it. But I did some grinding before this, like between the last time that I talked about it. I'm about 26 hours in, and I was struggling against this one boss, so I said, screw it. I'm just going to go make sure that leveling isn't my problem. I'm going to make sure that strategy is the only thing I need to overcome. And once I got there, I'm in a much better place now. Things are going smoother. I remember complaining that I missed in the first game, you could turn random encounters. It was actually on a scale. Like, you could up the because the enemies didn't appear on screen. You could increase the frequency of which you got them, or decrease it on a sliding scale all the way down to 0, or all the way up to like 200%. I was annoyed that they didn't have that in this game, because enemies are on the map and you run into them or they run into you. Thankfully, you do not have to out-level an area very far, or if at all, really, for the enemies to start running away from you. At which point, for all intents and purpose, there are no more random encounters. Because until then, they do charge you, and there's really no way around it. But again, as long as you don't skip every single battle you run into, eventually the enemies are like, you're too strong for us, run away. And then you can control when you fight. Specifically, you can control how many enemies you fight at a time, which increases the amount of experience and job points you get, which can really ramp up the speed of which you get those jobs and those abilities. And it's becoming more fun to play around with the abilities and the passives and the combinations and stuff. And like right now, I've got one character, he went full monk, full berserker. He has this ability where he can just do his normal attack, which does a decent amount of damage to all enemies at once. It just makes him a little slower. And then I can do that 4 times in a row because of the brave mechanic, and trash, mobs, encounters become just boom, they're done. They're all dead. And I really just don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's really cool. With that said, I wish games like this had like loadouts. I don't want to spend 20 minutes swapping abilities and jobs and equipment around. I want to have this is my boss fight kit. I want to be able to switch to it immediately. This is my, grinding kit. I want to switch to it immediately. This is my everybody's a thief and I'm going to steal as much stuff kit, and I want to switch to it immediately. I'm surprised no one's ever done anything like that before, because it doesn't seem like it'd be that hard.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking that's kind of a first-person shooter thing.
Mhm.
It's not something that this genre does, but that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the first person who figures out, how to implement that is going to get huge brownie points from, people who play these kinds of games. Certainly myself, because again, I did it earlier. I was grinding up jobs on my way up through this tower into the boss fight, and I knew that my current loadout was not going to be sufficient. I wanted to put on my powerful jobs that I knew worked, where I had all the abilities, but it took me it feels really long. It probably only takes 3 minutes, but it's all about that feel.
It's a break in your gameplay. Yeah,
and you don't want that.
Breaking your flow.
Yep. So it's really fun, and I'm having a great time. Hopefully I can resist the call of the Monster Hunter to beat this game, because I do. I want to beat it. I bought it. Might as well. So, but that is it.
I didn't realize you bought it already.
Bought. No. Bravely Default 2. I bought Bravely Default 2.
Oh, I apologize. I thought you meant you had pre-ordered the Monster Hunter.
No need to pre-order unless I'm going to play it the day it comes out, just to have it downloaded, and I would only do that a day or two ahead of time. But yeah, I mean, I'll definitely still be playing. For a second, I thought, I was like, am I going to skip Monster Hunter? And then I said, that's crazy. No, I'm not skipping Monster Hunter. Crazy Karch. Karch madness. All right.
I have a feeling we started something really bad.
No, it's going to be great. All right. That's what we've been playing. Tell us what you've been playing in the comments or on the Twitters or on the Instagram that exists but is a ghost town otherwise. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk Bethesda.
Oh, yeah.
All right, now it's time for the topic of the show. So we are keeping this segment, and sometimes it'll be topical, sometimes it won't be, and this week it is, because some pretty big stuff happened, and this isn't new news, but it is now official news. And that is, friend of the show, Phil Spencer, purchased ZeniMax with his own money. He saved up from the lemonade stands, and he put his quarters on the table, and ZeniMax said, yeah, let's do it. But we got to get the USA and EU approval first, and they finally did that. So now it's official, and a bunch of Bethesda games, because, yes, it was ZeniMax, and yes, Bethesda has lots of different developers, but for the most part, I'm just going to say Bethesda, because that's easier. Does
Everybody knows
agree?
what you mean.
Yeah, good, okay. And so, Microsoft, who's been on just an acquisition train ride the last 2 years or so, has made its biggest purchase yet in acquiring Bethesda, has acquired the best, biggest, catalog of IP out of all the ones it's acquired so far. Definitely spent the most it's probably ever spent on an acquisition, because I think Minecraft was what, $4 billion?
$4 billion for Mojang and Minecraft.
Which was, that was considered a very wise and good deal, because I'm sure that's paid back 10 times over at this point. This one was $7.5 billion, which is...
That's like nearly 30 billion quarters that Philly Spencer had to pull out of his pocket.
Right, one by one by one. Oh, the lemonade could drown the entire, Eastern Hemisphere. Anyway, so what are your thoughts on this acquisition and the merger of Bethesda into the Microsoft Xbox family? We'll go with our resident Xbox fanboy, Sean Mipers.
On one hand, I mean, obviously super excited. This guarantees that at least when it comes to playing on consoles, one, I'm gonna have every Bethesda and all those related studios games coming out day one Game Pass. Like going back to our last episode, man, this purchase is one of those things that just I think is going to continue to reinforce having Game Pass and the value of Game Pass. On the other hand, though, we've heard a bit about this. We've heard that line that what Bethesda games are going to be console exclusives to the Xbox, because we know that if they're going to come out on PC, they'll come out on pretty much everything's going to come out on PC. It's just whether or not they're also going to release on PlayStation or Nintendo. But they've said it'll be a case by case basis. So is this a case of more like a Mojang where they continue to put out things for the entire the entire industry, or are we going to see an Elder Scrolls become, hey, if you want to play Elder Scrolls, you're playing it on the PC or the Xbox, and that's where you're going to get it.
Wherever Game Pass is available.
Or wherever Game Pass is available.
That's a
Microsoft
nice one.
Probably digs further and further into that. But certainly to me, this is nothing but good news for me. I was always going to play these games on on a Microsoft console, most likely. And so, hey, I'm all for this. I'm excited. But just there's still a lot of questions of what this looks like going forward.
Definitely. Jason, what are your thoughts?
Well, to Sean's point about how will Microsoft run Bethesda, I think it'll be a combination of what you just mentioned, because Microsoft's already announced that Bethesda will remain in its own separate business. They've seemed to try to put emphasis on the fact that they're going to continue to develop games like they did before, and this is a similar approach that Microsoft's used for its other recent large acquisitions, including Mojang, but also including LinkedIn and including GitHub. This is kind of how they're doing this type of thing. So that's promising. But that said, they also own Xbox, right? And I think letting Bethesda be autonomous in their creative direction doesn't necessarily mean that's what's best for Xbox. So it'll be interesting to see if they try to maneuver what's best for Microsoft or what's best for Xbox, or are those the same thing? And will they say, take whatever creative direction you will on Elder Scrolls 6, but it's going to be exclusive, like Sean said, to Xbox and PC. So that's where I see the
Here's
combination.
an interesting thing is I went back and looked at like the Skyrim and the Skyrim Special Edition sale figures, and obviously, I mean, Todd Howard came out a while back and said Skyrim was their best-selling PC game. I don't think that surprises anyone. I mean, Skyrim is one of the best-selling games in gaming history.
Mm-hmm.
What I did find interesting is when you looked at console sales, Xbox sold more copies of Skyrim by almost a factor of 2, or I think greater than a factor of 2 compared to PlayStation.
Yeah, they have on console specifically. The Elder Scrolls series has a history with Xbox, even though Oblivion eventually came to PS3 or maybe even day and date. Like it was basically
more,
an Xbox
more
exclusive.
when it was a Xbox exclusive.
Yes, it was.
Like if you look at it from a sales standpoint, I don't know how much you obviously lose some, but it's not the majority of your sales standpoints that you're going to lose if you cut out that PlayStation install or player base.
Oh, except though that, I mean, obviously you'll gain Game Pass subscribers, but you are losing those sales on the Xbox side. So great, 2-1, but now it doesn't matter anymore. Now PlayStation has you infinite to 1, like because maybe, I mean, some people are still going to buy the game instead of Game Pass, or they'll buy it anyway, even though they have Game Pass. But like, it's not as cut and dry. Like I hear what you're saying for sure. They have the majority of the mind share. Xbox fans are Bethesda fans. They're kind of like one and the same, but it's sticky. It's sticky, and it's a black box. And we talked about this a lot last time because our topic was Game Pass value. So this is an excellent like segue topic, so to speak.
Yeah.
But it's interesting for sure. Exclusivity. You guys touched on it just a bit ago. And it's still kind of up in the air. Like I think a lot of people have kind of settled on the fact that aside from a few titles, specifically some of their online ones like Fallout 76, Elder Scrolls Online, which will of course they will remain on the existing platforms they are on, whether that's PC, like Steam PC, or whether that's other consoles for Fallout 76 and that kind of stuff. And of course we have things like Deathloop, which is a PS5 exclusive for at least a year. From Arcane Studios. Do you guys think that anything else comes to a non-game? Because that's the weird wording that Phil Spencer's used so far is played where Game Pass is available. So, but for now, which is only phones, Xbox, and PC. But again, still inside that Game Pass ecosystem. Do you guys think games ever come to anything that isn't Game Pass again?
You mean in terms of streaming service or just platform in general?
I think he's asking, will PlayStation get the next Fallout? Will they get the next Elder Scrolls? And
right, that is what I'm asking.
Without also allowing Game Pass to be part of their, something that you can also make use of on their console.
Right. Assuming Game Pass doesn't come to any of these other platforms like Switch and PlayStation, do they ever see the next Skyrim?
I think so, and I'll tell you why. Xbox's CFO Tim Stewart actually was quoted as saying that Bethesda or other ZeniMax studios will be first, better, or best on Xbox platforms. Which that phrasing leads me to believe for the super large IP, I think it will come to other platforms as well. I just really think with the direction that you've seen Microsoft go with Obsidian, even though Bethesda is so much bigger, so much better, and could attract that exclusivity, I think that they probably saw something in the tea leaves with how they handled the Obsidian acquisition that told them, yeah, we need to do something similar with Bethesda.
You're talking about how Outer Worlds was basic on everything?
Well, yeah, but and I know those were pre-existing deals, but I'm saying that their DLC also was, which didn't necessarily have to be, and their other game. What was that little bug game that they put out?
Grounded.
Grounded. Was that not on? Was that exclusive to Xbox?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, disregard everything I just said.
I think the impression is Avowed will certainly be an Xbox exclusive at this
Agreed.
point.
I think
That's a good
that
point, too.
phrasing. I think that phrasing can be technically interpreted different ways, but I think what it is it's careful legalese, but not legalese, but it's a careful PR talk that says first are the things that we actually have control over. So the next Elder Scrolls, which is unlikely to have been promised to anybody yet. The next Fallout, again, unlikely to have been promised to anybody yet. Starfield, those will be there first and maybe exclusively on Game Pass. Whereas the next part of that phrase, better or best, is we couldn't get it here because of legal reasons, but we're going to say it's the best place to play it because that's what we wish we could do. We wish we could make it exclusive, but because we got here a little too late, we can't. So that's what the Deathloop eventually, when it comes to Game Pass, it'll be the quote-unquote best place to play it. It's just what they say.
really
Obviously, that's not true.
interesting.
You're still first if you're the first and only.
Right, and then maybe to take it one step further again, like maybe Starfield does come to Xbox Game Pass exclusively, but then maybe a year later they're like, okay, now it's on Steam. We've gotten all of what we think we could get out of it because let's face it, that's just how this business works. Those first week to months are like the 90%. The next year is like the 9%. And then anything else after that is 1%, unless you're doing the Skyrim thing where you're remastering and you're just dipping into that, that player base, like again and again and again. All right. So let's pretend exclusivity is guaranteed, contract negotiations aside, everything new. We're going to assume it's all coming to only Game Pass. What does that mean for Sony?
I think so. I was thinking about this earlier. There is a very big difference between Fallout and Elder Scrolls, and even something like Doom and Dishonored, and your Last of Us and your Uncharted and your God of War. God of War, maybe actually there's a certain level of like premier pinnacle quality that comes with some of those Sony Sony exclusives that I don't think you quite see matched in in anything in Bethesda's catalog. Where maybe there's an argument that they're better though is they might be games that actually are more appealing to a wider base of people than what Sony's got. Like the next Elder Scrolls is going to outsell Last of Us Part 2. Like that is going to happen.
But will it with Game Pass, man? That's what I keeps like. We don't. Are we going to have those numbers anymore, or is it going to get swallowed up?
Let's just talk about player base. People who have played it. More people will play the next Elder Scrolls than people will play The Last of Us Part 2. Let's fine. Let's not talk unit solds, but like. Is arguably The Last of Us Part 2 probably a higher quality game? Yeah. But Skyrim and therefore Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be a game that's going to attract, I think, a larger base of people. And that might be what Microsoft's looking at. Like Sony puts out premier games. But if the Bethesda games become Microsoft exclusives, Microsoft's going to have, I think, the games that are going to appeal a larger crowd.
That's a really good point. It does beg the question why they didn't do that with Minecraft, but I mean, this may be kind of a turning point because Minecraft was so ubiquitous by the time they did that that they couldn't undo what they couldn't put
you can't go like I don't think they were going to go back, but for like Karch said, games going forward.
Exactly.
Well, it's not even that. Like that is such a different beast. Like Sean, you just made a good point about Elder Scrolls eclipsing player base counts for Sony exclusives. Even Spider-Man probably like pales in comparison. Minecraft dwarfs it by a magnitude.
By I think a literal order of magnitude. I think Skyrim is like 30 million, and I think Minecraft is 300 million.
Right, and so like it's not just a game. It's not just a exclusivity platform. We're talking about a merchandise, television. Like it's literally everything, and then you just don't mess with that formula. There's no way to improve it already.
You think about what the Bethesda big franchises, your Fallout and your Elder Scrolls. These are games that people, I got probably between Skyrim and Skyrim Special Edition, I probably have 50, 60 days in those games.
Real life days.
I know I have like 35 plus on and that was before I went through this most recent binge. So it may be up to around like 37, 38 now. Time playing those games, like the amount of time that people stay dedicated to playing your game. Not that necessarily brings you more money, but in some ways it might.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps like on the Skyrim subreddits, I see to this day people coming in and fairly frequently of like, yeah, I never played this game before, and oh my gosh, I'm so upset that I'm just now getting to it.
Right.
Like a Last of Us, is you play that game and yeah, you might, if you really like it, you might play it again, but this isn't a game that's going to keep people around anywhere close to that amount of time. It is not going to keep you in, the minds of the player base like some of these Bethesda games do. And I mean, really, when you think about it, there aren't, besides MMOs, there aren't a lot of games that do that.
No, you're probably right.
Minecraft's,
So, like, with all that said, all that true, none of that's wrong, and they're all very good points. But what does that mean for PlayStation or Nintendo, for that matter? Because they got a couple Bethesda games. Bethesda's actually been quite what's the word I'm looking for?
Generous.
Yeah, generous with getting bothering to port their games to the Switch, where other bigger AAA studios haven't.
Same thing with VR, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that's another good point. What does that mean for VR necessarily? Because like Xbox does not have a way, if I'm not mistaken, to play VR games. Like Game Pass,
they don't. There was a
missing
rumor that
component.
Xbox One was gonna be compatible with Oculus, and that never came
that
true.
never happened.
Yeah,
and it never will now that Facebook owns them. That was before Facebook bought them.
Right.
This doesn't mean anything for Sony until Sony actually sees this shift the console war against them.
Yeah,
I agree.
Like if Sony starts, can make a case that either people are going to Xbox or people are just going on Game Pass and they're playing it via xCloud and they're seeing their sales drop. Sony will have to rethink how the type of games they're offering. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love God of War, but clearly just from the hours, I love Skyrim more.
There's more to do. And there's replayability. So
yeah.
What do you think Sony cares most about? Because from an outward, or I guess from an outside perspective, looking into the public-facing Sony and Microsoft, they're kind of looking at different metrics. Because I do feel like Sony cares most about consoles sold, and Xbox cares about.
Microsoft has so thoroughly lost the console war at the end of the day. I mean, I don't think that's an arguable fact anymore.
The physical
Sony
console war.
Sony is set on winning the physical console war, and because they want as many consoles out, because they want you buying software, and that's where they want to make their money. Microsoft is totally pivoted to, or not totally, but Microsoft is pivoting away from the consoles being their main focus to Game Pass,
to being a platform. So yeah. I guess that's my question. Let's say you took all of Xbox and all of PlayStation, and Xbox was worth more, but achieved that in a way that Sony didn't necessarily care about. Does that motivate them at all?
If it doesn't, if Sony doesn't see that they're not meeting, that they're not meeting their sale targets, because obviously it's not just a matter of they want to do just as well as the PS4. They want the PS5 to do better than the PS4 because corporations, and unless it's something where it begins to affect what their goals are. No, I don't think so. But we all know we only got so much time in the day, and if Microsoft is able to more easily be the one that fills your time because, hey, instead of having to get this console and I need the TV, I can just run this on my phone, and by the way, these brand new games that are becoming games people want to play are super easy for to access because of Game Pass. And
everybody knows that once you make something available to do on the toilet or laying on your back in bed, you've frickin' made it.
And admittedly, yes, there are capabilities of doing this with like Karch talked about. You can send your footage or your gameplay to your mobile device, but that is a big difference between that and xCloud, where I don't even need the monolith anymore.
Yeah,
right. Jason, you brought up does Sony care? I think that's an interesting point. Like, because right now we just assume they do. We assume that Nintendo doesn't care about them anymore. Like, it's been about a generation and a half, maybe even 2 generations now, where Nintendo's been like, we're playing our own game and we're winning at it, and it's great. And you,
it's like
and
when you race somebody in traffic and they don't know you're racing them.
exactly.
That's Nintendo.
And so is Sony going to become its own Nintendo, where you have like these three entities all operating in the same industry? And so like from one level, analysts and market people and economists look at it as the same group, but when they look at each other and they talk to like their shareholders are like, don't look at them, just look at us and look at all the money we're making by ourselves in our own little silo. It's like they got their subscription money, we've got our premier console, and they're the toy. Like, I don't know, maybe we'd finally get like everybody claims themselves the winner and it's actually true. It would be this weird world.
Console war is over because everybody won.
Exactly.
And consumers probably lost, but that's okay.
I have to go back, like, am I going to want to get a PS5? Yes, eventually. Mostly because I'm going to eventually want to play God of War 2 or Ragnarok or whatever it ends up getting called. But like, I've had the PSP. Besides that, no, that's it. I've played God of War on my PlayStation 4.
And you've admitted you didn't get it. Right. Katie got it. Like that was her console.
I've got limited time, and right. As far as I can tell, by and large, obviously I'm going to make the time to go play Final Fantasy VII Remake, but mostly what I got time for is
Skyrim.
Xbox, and then when Nintendo puts out a game that I really want to play, I go play Nintendo. But like, it was not enough to get me to buy a PlayStation. Now, clearly by the way console sales have gone, I am not the majority here, but this, Bethesda's brings a lot of games that are going to eat up people's time, and people may decide that they'd rather have time playing those games. And you know what? Yeah, maybe I will lapse on being a PlayStation fan.
Are you worried at all about Bethesda becoming BioWare, but for Microsoft instead of EA?
I'll be honest. Halo Infinite gives me pretty good faith. Microsoft, basically 343 wasn't, we realized they weren't ready, and they got more time to put the polish on the game and get the game out. That's going to come out in a better state. Everything that I've seen out of BioWare, not everything, but a large chunk of what EA and BioWare's toxic relationship has been EA basically dictating when BioWare has to get things done, and it hurting BioWare.
Well, that and the monetization strategy, right? So.
Yes. But like, Bethesda does not make games fast. Now, there's some interesting thoughts here. Like, Obsidian has worked with this, what is essentially the same engine that has been used since. I think I know it got a big overhaul for Oblivion, but Bethesda's using the same engine for Skyrim, essentially, that they were using back with Morrowind, and I think for Fallout 4, Obsidian has worked on that. They put up Fallout New Vegas. So do you have the ability now of, hey, we need some help doing stuff, and Microsoft's got this big pool of studios that they can pull upon to help BioWare put out some things, or maybe Obsidian gets to take a crack at the next Fallout. They get to just put out a DLC.
No, that never happens. It's fun to think about and theorize and like, oh, what if we're completely ignoring the human component? Like, I don't think Bethesda and Obsidian get along. I think there's bad blood there from like projects in the past. You can't just, they can because they own them now, and right. If that's what they want at the end of the day,
But what does Microsoft bring to the table? Microsoft brings the table to help negotiate those two to get along.
Well, and that's but the other point that you make, Sean, is Microsoft has 23 first-party studios. They have a lot of resources, even if they're not from Obsidian, that they could probably help with something at Bethesda.
Maybe,
Bethesda,
but like
Bethesda was already big, so they had some capability of doing that, and we never saw a ton of it. But I agree with the Karch. It's not something that ever happens, but also like we're in a realm right now with like Game Pass and whatnot of things that never happen.
Right. It's just not as cool as it is to talk about. Getting teams who even want to work together like that is it's no, and if anybody could, it'll be Microsoft. But like that's the thing, like can they? Like Microsoft can't even seem to get itself like okay, sure, they know how to buy people, good. Can they do anything with it? Jason, you said 23 studios, and you have a note here versus Sony's 13. What does that matter when Sony's produced so many amazing first-party titles or sponsored some really great second-party titles, and Microsoft has jack all to show for their 23 studios?
That's
Still
true.
Even after all this time, where's Hellblade 2? Crackdown 3 sucks. Halo Infinite got delayed a huge amount. Like, if they don't have, and I hate using this example all the time, but like it's hard to think of one that everybody knows. And obviously, one man can't be this powerful. But where's the Kevin Feige to step in and like? Because it's not Spencer. Spencer's like, he's too much at the top. He might have some role, but they need someone lower down in that middle tier. They need to create a position or two that will
Major
do all
Nelson?
these things.
Who's Major Nelson?
I don't know. He's the Twitter guy, isn't he?
Yeah,
Oh,
Major
wow.
Nelson's like Xbox PR, I think,
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
So
He's not,
like
gotcha.
they need like this
or community manager or
this
something like that.
this person might exist, but this position didn't exist until recently, if it exists at all. But they need someone with a magic touch who can do all these things and bring these components together to make them run well. Because this is a lot of stuff to handle. This is
Do they,
and
though?
yeah, and
Like,
what?
if do they like if we go back 5 years and let's go all out. Let's go back 10 years. And let's say Skyrim was a console exclusive. Let's say Dishonored 1 and 2 were consoles exclusive. Let's say Fallout 4 was a console exclusive. Let's say Doom and Doom Eternal were console exclusives. Does that not totally change the conversation that we'd be having about the console wars right now?
I'm not sure I understand your point.
He's
Like,
saying if you go back,
let's say Microsoft had acquired all these companies 10 years ago, and all the games they've put out in the last 10 years were Xbox and PC exclusives.
I see.
Like, Microsoft at that point has all these games that are, like I said, they're not it's quite the cinematic premiere experiences that Sony tends to put out. But these are top-notch games that have changed conversations about what their particular genres can be.
In your hypothetical, the only thing changes though is where they sold them and absolutely nothing else. And where in this case, like this changes everything. And I know like we don't understand it. And we were talking about this earlier off camera. Like it is literally impossible for us to like comprehend business at this level. It can't be. But like Bethesda, Todd Howard isn't going to remain the Todd Howard. Like these things just don't, and maybe they do. I don't know. But these things usually don't just continue as is. The company that bought you, like, so kind of to Jason's question earlier, not like EA, because platform holders are different from EA's and Activision's. They don't operate and think the same. They have different monetization practices and how they get their profit. But, and I'm not saying Bethesda's going to just like crumble apart, but
Admittedly, it was my I hope this doesn't happen prediction when we went through the new year, but
that they wouldn't crumble apart.
no, that they would. We were supposed to predict something terrible, and that was my prediction.
Oh, I see. So like, and this is kind of a question I just came up with, that I didn't have earlier. Is like, how does this improve anything? Does this improve anything? Like, what does Bethesda and their various developers, like, aside from all the bigwigs and any like stakeholders getting a huge payday, how does Microsoft improve these games? Like, oh, we just want to leave them alone. Like, I mean, I guess maybe that's all you're gonna do.
well,
But how does Elder Scrolls 6 get out a little faster? Does it come out
that's
less
what I was going to say.
buggier? Like,
Pete Hines tweeted something to the effect of like, we're continuing to operate the same way that we always have. It's just we have more resources than we've ever had. So obviously that's a PR spin, but it's also a little true.
because but I mean, like that's if it's true, that's a big deal coming from someone as big as Bethesda.
Let's I mean, obviously smaller case, but let's look at Mojang. Let's look at what Mojang has benefited from its pairing with Microsoft.
Good point.
They've been able to put out obviously Minecraft Dungeons, but there's been a lot of expansions, and the rate of content coming out for Minecraft is certainly more than it was when it was independent.
Right.
What's Microsoft's role in that? I don't know exactly, but it certainly doesn't appear to have been negative for Mojang.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I want to be positive about this because I love Bethesda games, but I mean, it could go terrible, and it could be worse than BioWare. In which case, I'm just going to stop loving RPG games that start with or companies that make RPGs and have start with the letter B, because apparently that's just terrible. I don't even know if it matters if. I mean, it would be nice, admittedly, to get an Elder Scrolls game that comes out less, or a Bethesda game that isn't a buggy mess. That would be nice. do you really think people aren't going to turn out for the next Elder Scrolls?
I'm not saying that. That's so far away from a possibility. That's not what I'm entertaining. I'm talking about what could happen.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not concerned that suddenly Bethesda's not going to put out any, like that again. I don't think Bethesda's going to crumble. I don't think people are going to stop. I feel like people should take a step back and look at what Bethesda's put out, and even being purchased by Microsoft. Hopefully Microsoft whips them into shape a little bit. Unfortunately, Fallout 76 was garbage, and it still did incredibly well after its like initial hiccup. So like nothing matters apparently. Like Bethesda can just do whatever it wants, and people will come and get their games.
Yeah, Fallout 76 is a discussion I do want to have later, because part of me wonders, there's an aspect to me there, Bethesda intentionally knowing they were going to upset people, but intentionally going for a different market. There's a reason it's not called Fallout 5 at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's true.
And like you said, it must be doing well because they continue to put out sizable updates for it.
Oh yeah, no, like I said, like they got. I mean, I don't know if they got lucky, but they got off without so much as like like compare it to Cyberpunk. Like I feel like if I had my way, swap those two. Swap the outrage and the like. I feel like I really wanted Bethesda to take it on the chin and just get raked over the coals, and not just verbally, but like financially. Like you put out a piece of garbage, and you knew it, and you should be punished for it. Like in the way that a company can be punished. Whereas Cyberpunk, right, exactly. Whereas Cyberpunk, again, you also put out a piece of garbage, but we know you probably meant well. We have an idea of what kind of happened, and there's a lot of things at play here, and this is your first misstep, and blah 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 blah. Like if in my world, if I had my way, I would swap.
I think it's a little harsh to say that Bethesda didn't mean well. I mean, that's a little harsh for the developers of Bethesda to say they willingly put out I think there was a thought of what Fallout 76
I don't know. They consistently put out the same kinds of problems in games, but I don't want to get into that's off topic, and I don't want to get into. We can bash on Bethesda, and Sean can defend Bethesda another day, and Jason can just eat his popcorn in the middle.
I'd love that.
Next, moving on though, potential Game Pass future on other platforms. So that's again, wherever Game Pass is available. Does this somehow, in any way, push Game Pass onto other systems?
Oh, geez.
Like PlayStation and Nintendo.
What's interesting is I heard that this was... I actually read an article that had a headline that said that this acquisition in some way contributed to Google taking a step back from trying to get into the developer field.
Just giving up, you mean? Like, oh, wow,
yeah.
This is...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't know if that's true or not, but this is maybe a bad stereotype, but traditionally, Japanese companies just pivot and adapt to market conditions a little bit slower than American competitors. And we're seeing that here with Xbox totally embracing this cloud future, available everywhere. We want our games to be played, period. And Sony and Nintendo don't go anywhere near that. And so I just find it hard to believe that either of those platforms would, embrace having Game Pass on there. But that said, I don't know. Like, where else would it go? It's already on Android. It's already on iOS. Right. What else can you put it on if Nintendo and Sony aren't receptive to having it there?
Tesla cars.
Yeah, Teslas. Maybe that's it.
I mean...
Which runs on
getting
Android,
a little bit off topic, but Game Pass, especially as xCloud becomes more and more of what we all want it to be, and which maybe will take a infrastructure boost for the U.S. But Game Pass being on your phones, I mean, you want to make a different flavor argument about the death of consoles, being able to play premier AAA games on your phone via something like xCloud is, to me, more likely of killing off a console than saying everyone's just eventually going to buy PCs.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I think this just comes down to money. Like, I don't... Maybe Game Pass is profitable. Like, again, strictly Game Pass. Like, it's hard to determine, profit becomes fuzzy when, like, who's making what money and what they're reporting, like Hollywood accounting. There's lots of examples of weirdness with profits. But if I had to guess, and I did a quick Google, and I didn't find any strong evidence for a profit being gained on Game Pass. Like right now, they're probably still losing money on Game Pass. They're probably they're raking everybody in, they're getting everybody used to it, and eventually, and we talked about this last week or last time, they're gonna jack the price up eventually to eventually hit that, what they want. But with Game Pass not making a profit, $7.5 billion just dropped on Bethesda, which isn't going to get made back nearly as fast as maybe the Minecraft money was, because there's very few new games coming out of any of these studios specific that aren't also then coming out on PlayStation 5 as exclusive. It's funny just how many there are with the Ghostwire Tokyo and Deathloop, and I feel like there's another one I'm forgetting, like a big one that I'm forgetting, but it's not coming to me right now. Anyway, all that to say, if Game Pass comes to PlayStation or Nintendo are not going, those companies are not going to be like, okay, you can do that for free. Or you can have all these awesome indies that we're charging $20 for essentially for free. Like, there's going to be some altered version of it, or there's going to be a big payout. And right now, I just don't think Xbox is like, we can't. We literally, we're willing to take a hit on it, as we grow it. But if we were to put it on these companies, I honestly wonder, what does that conversation look like? I assume it's happened at least a little bit, but how much money can you really offer someone like PlayStation and Nintendo who are going to want a big piece of that pie?
Well, but
and
that's
they take
great,
30% from everybody else.
That's gravy on top of the base anyway.
What do you mean?
Well, if I'm charging you $15 a month to play it on Nintendo, you weren't going to get it any other way. That's at least let's say my kickback to Nintendo's $5.
That's
that's
still $10
$33.
you weren't going to get otherwise.
Right. Yes and no, sort of. You're already paying for it, though, Sean. So you would presumably expect to get it let's say it does come to Nintendo. You would presumably expect to get it there, too. But maybe what they do is okay, well, you got to buy the Nintendo add-on, which is another $5, or it's a base price of $15. And
which
then
is
if
that
you want to
channel model we talked about last time a little bit.
That would be cool. That'd be
different
interesting.
flavor, but
I kind of like the sound of that, really. So yeah, all right, just real quick. Likelihood Game Pass comes to PlayStation or Nintendo in the next 5 years. Yes or no?
No.
Oh man, 5 years?
5 years. It's a long time.
I'm gonna say maybe for
We'll
Nintendo.
be dead by then.
Maybe for Nintendo, we will be dead by then. But maybe for Nintendo, definitely. I'm gonna say definitely not for Sony.
Yeah. No.
But Nintendo could probably use the boon.
Mm-hmm. All right. The last thing that I have is, does this worry you? This is not a monopoly kind of thing, but these, Sony bought Insomniac, and that's not a huge deal because Insomniac pretty much worked exclusively with Sony for the last entirety of his existence, except for a few games. But does this kind of Amazon style, let's just buy everything or cheap out because we have literally $1 trillion company behind us and it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter because we'll be here still when they're dead in 5 years. Karch is dead. Jason's dead. Nintendo is dead. And we're still here. We win by default. Now we can charge whatever we want and all the profit is ours. Does this kind of thing worry you guys? Because it worries me. I don't like it. It makes me uneasy. Why did Bethesda have to be bought? It was doing fine. It didn't need to be bought.
It worries me because I gave too much credit to Amazon when it was up and coming. I was so yes, Amazon,
we all did.
You go, girl. You buy everything. You fight Walmart. You fight Best Buy. They're not my friends. And that bit me because now, back in the day, they didn't even charge sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not their fault. That's a regulatory thing. But
right,
man, they have some predatory practices, and they have gotten too big for their britches. Jeffy's grown up into a monster.
He has.
I 100%. Yeah, I agree that I'm not really. It does concern me that Bethesda got bought. We talked about when this news first came out that it blew us away that Bethesda was even up for being bought.
Right.
I would much rather. It goes back to Respawn. I would have rather Respawn and BioWare were not a part of EA. I understand that these types of arrangements bring these studios presumably benefits that they like, or I guess in some cases, in a more pessimistic view, it just really makes the higher up stakeholders happy with whatever payout they're getting. I would prefer a world that Bethesda had stayed independent because at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect me. Having it on Game Pass will be nice. Right. But I would have happily have dropped $60 or God forbid here in a few years $70 for the next Elder Scrolls, and it wouldn't have upset me that it wasn't available on Game Pass.
Yeah, because like we've said several times, everyone was always going to buy it. Like that's not really the question at stake necessarily. It's a much more nuanced and harder to answer question.
Yeah, it's interesting because with Bethesda and Obsidian owned by Microsoft, and if they do go exclusive, what other Western open world RPGs do you have?
Western? I mean, Sony has a couple under their belt. Not that Days Gone was received well, but you're right. Yeah, I mean, and then CD Projekt Red is another. Although they're not Western per se, but they act like a Western. Like those games are stylized after the same kind of.
Yeah, but like Microsoft's going to have a pretty good hold on those style of games.
You would think there's going to be too many?
No.
I mean, there's already the same amount, I guess.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't affect me. It's on the platform I play, but there is a concern here. Like I said, if it goes poorly, I mean, yes, I guess at the end of the day, if it goes poorly, probably a bunch of those developers will leave and start their own company, and that's where, the same way that when Black Isle and all that and Interplay went belly up, Obsidian came along, was formed. But there is a concern here that you almost seem to be kind of condensing down certain style of games or almost becoming centralized on certain platforms.
That's really interesting because Sony definitely has the third-person action adventure.
Nintendo has obviously their IP. Yeah, that's Nintendo's thing. We talked about, I mean, the third person, but also just those really premier cinematic experiences. But you're talking about, a little bit, but with the Doom and
they're gonna have shooters.
Really, kind of the first person style games. I mean, whether it's an Elder Scrolls and it's sword and spell, or it's Halo or Doom, that's a shooter. Yeah, I mean, yes, your Call of Duty is going to continue to cross-release, but you're almost seeing like a specialization of style of games going to each of these consoles, which is strange at a minimum. It really just dawned on me, so I'm really not entirely sure how I feel about that.
I wasn't ready to process this.
Hey, to circle back, we don't necessarily know that games like Elder Scrolls 6 or Starfield are going to be on Game Pass because... Like the DLC for Outer Worlds was pay. It was like $30. It was not on Game Pass.
It's because Microsoft has said all of their studios' games, maybe not the DLCs, but their games will be first day on Game Pass.
Outer Worlds is a terrible example. Do not use Outer Worlds as an example, because it's so mired in that. Like I had
prior
one foot in two
two
different sides of the thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point.
But I mean, Microsoft has said that their exclusive games their studio games will be first day release, day of release on Game Pass.
And we'll see if that holds true. I think for the longest time, I think it's going to. They won't go the Disney Pass Premium or Disney Plus Premium Access route where they, you got Disney Pass. I keep calling it Pass. You got Disney Plus, but hey, why don't you just drop $30 on this new movie too? And that'll be the dystopia in which that kills us. That's how we die in 5 years.
I believe that, man.
It'll turn you guys all off, and my D&D campaign will be your only form of entertainment.
Oh,
that's fine. I'll be too old to entertain too many. Like I'll just be playing Final Fantasy IX over and over and over and over and over and over again. Jason will have fallen in love with Final Fantasy VII. The original, and he'll just keep playing that over and over. And
over. What a bright future!
All right, that's all I had to say about that. Does anybody have any closing thoughts before we close out the show?
Nope. I think I covered everything I got.
Cool. That was a good talk, gentlemen. Thank you.
Certainly was. Well, all right. Well, I just want to say later, Skater. I love this podcast, I love video games, and I love you two lovely NFers. That's all we have for you this week. We will see you in 2 weeks. Have a good 2 weeks. We will try, but we are never free to play.
Finally, in our 60s and 70s, we'll get internet famous.
Except by that time, all of our currently progressive opinions will be conservative, and they'll think we're racist bigots.
Yeah. Why do they call them black people? That's so racist.